call this meeting to order. This is the regular school board meeting of the Northfield Public Schools. It is Monday, November 25th, 7 p.m. Dr. Richardson, there were just a couple items in our table file.
Yes, the table file, we have a little bit of additional information in terms of Bridgewater Elementary School, Northfield High School, as far as the PowerPoint presentations for those two programs. Also, we have some personnel items in terms of appointments, increase and decrease and change in assignments, as well as a leave of absence and a resignation, and also a gift agreement that is going to the activities program that will help support upgrading, repairing the timing equipment at our middle school pool.
Very good. If there's no objection, we will add these to the agenda as we move forward. All right. We're ready for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the community to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? All right. We will move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you had in your packets the minutes from the last school board meeting on November 12th. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Ann.
Second.
Seconded by Julie. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. All right, announcements and recognition.
Okay, I have several this evening. First of all, the Northfield Middle School student-run bookstore, Tattered Pages, is now accepting donations for the upcoming 7th annual holiday shopping extravaganza. The needed donations include gently used books for all ages, all types of molded media, including the infamous VHS tape, DVDs, video games, CDs, etc., in their original packaging. Gently used gift items from your home, such as picture frames, paperweights, stuffed animals, candles, jewelry boxes, candy dishes, etc., and anything in terms of gift wrap, bows, and bags. All the books in Tattered Pages are purchased by students using coupons rather than real currency, with students earned by donating books to the bookstore, by working in the bookstore, and by doing jobs from the staff job jar, and also by excelling in their own classrooms. Items in the bookstore range in value from 1 coupon to 15 coupons apiece. There are currently over 4,000 new and used books available in Tattered Pages. The 7th annual holiday shopping extravaganza will be a wonderful opportunity for students to purchase gifts for everyone on their holiday list without spending a dime. As in the past, the evening will include free gift wrapping, holiday treats, music, and movies. Donations can be dropped off at the middle school or call the Media Center for pickup. Please contact Amy Sieve at the Middle School Media Center for more information. And again, I think this is a great program and one that Amy and the staff at the middle school have really promoted through the years, and I think is having a very, very positive effect. Mm-hmm. Also would like to recognize our Greenville Park geckos, who basically collected 455 pounds of food, was collected for Greenville Park's Stuff the Turkey food drive. Way to go, geckos. Also, Bridgewater is holding Grandparents' Day tomorrow. And I know Nancy, I think, has mentioned that at a couple different times when she has been presenting before us, but grandparents at that time have an opportunity to see activities on the iPad minis and also experience some math games. So it'll be a really good opportunity for students to show their grandparents what they've been doing and the things that they've been learning. We'd also like to thank all of our elementary safety patrols, especially as we get toward the winter season. They provide safety for students walking to and from school every day. And obviously the winter months in Minnesota are especially character building. So again, we thank those folks for their service and also their sponsors or their supervisors. Also, best wishes to the musical groups, band, orchestra, and choir as they perform many times over the coming holiday season. They've spent a number of hours preparing, and this is their time to shine. Okay. Also, our girls swimming and diving team finished 9th overall at the state meet, and diver Bailey DuPay was the state diving champion. That makes it 3 years in a row for Bailey being the state champ in diving. Pretty impressive. So congratulations to all those folks. Mary, would you like to introduce Daryl as the building supervisor for the Longfellow building, and this is, I think, the first time Daryl has been in front of us. So, and I know, is he just checking things out to kind of get the lay of the land for next time?
Well, I think, yes, I think the ALC has a report due
Coming up, I think.
next month.
Okay. So would you please?
Certainly. Do you want me to use the mic or just sit here?
Well, why don't you bring him up to the mic?
Okay, come with me.
We'd have told him to dress up, you know, gotten the bow tie and the whole thing. Okay, because I think he was kind of thinking he might be able to kind of hang back and blend in. That's right.
This is winter in Minnesota.
That's right. He's blending in.
Good evening, and it's nice to be here. As administrator of the Longfellow building, I would like to introduce Daryl Keller. He is the new ALC director and started this fall as director of the ALC. So may I present Daryl Keller.
Welcome.
And those are all the announcements that I have this evening.
All right. Very good. We will move to our first item, which is the school improvement plan. Is Bridgewater going first? Very good. So Nancy Antoine will lead the Bridgewater team.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm here with my two RTI coaches from Bridgewater, Hope Langston and Connie Nelson, and we will present our report tonight. Obviously, our mission statement hasn't changed. We're empowering the learner, building foundations, and striving to be a respectful, successful, safe community of high-achieving learners. Our three objectives for this past year were moving students toward grade level proficiency in both reading and math, and doing so in a wonderful learning environment for students. So we'll start with reading, and Connie will take that on.
Okay, our student achievement goals for last year were, as you can see, 85% of students will meet fall to spring individual growth target on the math test, and that 80% of students in grades 3 through 5 will meet or exceed standards on the MCA test. We set our goal rather high without really taking into account that the revised 2013 MCA would be based on the Common Core standards instead of the Minnesota State standards. It's not an excuse, but you will see our reality here. Okay, in the spring math test, overall we had 73% of our Bridgewater students that met their individual growth targets. Now, as the graph shows, this was an improvement from 2011-2012 in all grades except for grade 5. Our second goal, the MCA performance, we had 70% of our students that met or exceeded in those categories. And as you can see, we did fall below by 10%. The good news was all of our subgroups met AYP. We were very proud of that in reading. Hope, would you like to come up?
So we took our data and we know that we have some work to do, and we started to dig a little deeper to look at specifically the NWEA growth situation, because we think we can do better. So we, Matt, I'm going to try your laser pointer. I love this. This pie chart actually indicates the 73% of our students who did make their reading growth, and here's the 27 who did not. And then we took that data and broke it down here. And it was about a 50-50 split between the kids who were scoring above the 50th percentile nationally and those who were not. And we didn't stop there. We wanted to go a little further. So we took that segment of kids and we broke them down by national percentiles, 0 to 19% and so on. Looking again for ways that we could drive our instruction, and the best way to do that is to know exactly who these kids are. And surprisingly, not surprisingly actually, given the RTI emphasis last year, the students scoring in the lowest national percentiles actually make up the smallest subset of these kids. And the remaining kids, are clearly where we can address some of our instructional needs. And we also found that of the students, of the 142 students at Bridgewater who did not meet their NWA target growth, 31% of them were within 2 points. So they were very close. But we knew that we could go ahead and address this issue right here in our existing curriculum. So that's what we did.
Those of you that know Hope know how fond she is of data, so I had to turn over a couple of my slides to her. Okay, so based on what the data shows us, here are some steps that we thought would have the most impact. This fall, we had data conferences with each teacher in our building. And what this entailed was going over each teacher's spring data so that they could look at their former students and analyze how they had done last year. Then we also presented them with the spring data that we had, and this was the Ready, Set, Go data that we had, and also the MCA results. So we were able to hand them a folder with all that data in there, and that way they could see which students we needed to start with interventions on, and also which students we needed to provide some challenging activities for. Then we also did grade level data retreats, which we've done the last few years. And this is pretty powerful. We get our whole grade level together and we spend a good hour projecting all the data from the grade level. And once again, we are really looking at those kids that need some interventions. It also really helps our teachers to take ownership of all the students in their grade. Challenge reading groups is something that we started this year, and we're really pleased. Our media specialist, Jerry Johnson, was willing to fill some of his extra slots throughout the day and meet with children at every grade level who were exceeding in the standards, and we felt like they needed some extra boost and extra enrichment. So he's been doing that, and that's been going very well. You probably have heard about flex grouping. We have reading flex groups going on every 4 days a week in every grade level, and that's a real opportunity to differentiate our curriculum. Words Their Way is a new curriculum that was implemented this fall in grades K through 5, and this is giving us some word study and opportunities to really help children with some phonics and also their spelling. Volunteers. Our Accelerate Northfield volunteers have expanded quite a bit this year through our RTI training and overseeing that. We're really pleased with how many students we're able to serve. I believe we have about 24 students that are getting interventions through volunteers. We also have 2 foster grandmas that have returned from last year, and they're a great asset to our younger readers. And Hope's going to talk about the Summer Plus program.
One of the greatest things that happened this summer, and I know some of you saw this on your walkthrough at the Plus program, was training of some high school students to continue on with some interventions that were started last year. And I went over there, and they were really eager to learn them, ask great questions, and they were able to continue intervention work in the summer with 4 of our Bridgewater students, and we hope to expand that next year. It's a great opportunity for these kids to continue their work throughout the summer.
This shows a picture of Jerry Johnson working with some of our students on the high end of the spectrum, and they're enjoying a book club. So this is our second year of formal implementation of response to intervention, and these are some of the new initiatives that we've undertaken this year. This is our first year to have Minnesota Reading Corps, and we feel very fortunate. We have an outstanding recent St. Olaf graduate who is serving as our Reading Corps tutor, and she meets with 18 students for 20 minutes each every single day of the week. And she's doing research-based interventions with every one of these students, and it's already exited at least 5 students. Our Accelerate Northfield RTI tutors, as I mentioned, they're seeing 24 students, and we have trained each of those tutors that's working in our building. And Hope, do you want to come back?
We are piloting our first ever iPad intervention for reading fluency. And it's called Read Naturally, which some of you may be aware of, but they came out with an iPad version this year. So we have trained our Accelerate Northfield tutor. She's the first one to use it, and it just started, and the kids are very motivated, and it's great for data tracking for us. So that's one of the things we're excited about expanding. We're also using reading fluency and early literacy interventions at the younger grade levels. These are teacher driven, and it's really exciting to see the teachers actually using their data all on their own without our help and setting up these interventions in response to what they're seeing in their own data. We also used some money that we earned last year being part of a U of M research study to purchase a touch phonics program, which Connie will talk a little further about, but it's a very explicit phonics program, and we feel really lucky to be able to offer our students 2 very different kinds of reading interventions at a young age.
This slide shows our Minnesota Reading Corps volunteer, Naomi, and she's tutoring a 2nd grader. And this is Amy Decker, who's our Accelerate Northfield intern. And just on a hunch, I asked her one day if she would be interested in doing any interventions herself. And she said, sure. She said, I have time. So we trained her, and she's now working with 5 students 4 days a week. And she's doing the Read Naturally iPad intervention, and said she's loving it. This just shows, this happens to be a kindergarten cart here that they have right outside their room. And this is an example of some teacher-driven interventions. And what we did, actually what the kindergarten teachers did, is they looked at their DIBELS data from our Ready, Set, Go day, and they determined, as the graph shows, that close to 50% of their students were in the red or yellow, which meant they were having difficulty with their letter sounds. So they have volunteers out in the hallway right across from their classroom every day, working with students one at a time, doing interventions. This shows the touch phonics that Hope mentioned. And this is an explicit phonics instruction. Our title teacher is using this for the first time this year and has been very excited about it, as are the students. You may be able to see they're using some tactile letters and making words. And by manipulating these letters, they're learning how to make words and also how to read these words. So we're having really good results so far with that. Level literacy is a new curriculum that we purchased this year, and you may have heard it referred to as LLI. And what this is a pretty comprehensive intervention program that's targeted to help students who are struggling or behind grade level in reading and writing. It also has an embedded phonics component as opposed to a real explicit one, so that everything that the students are reading is a way of teaching the phonics and also comprehension questions, as well as working on some fluency. This program works with up to 3 or 4 students at a time, and it's about a 40-minute segment each day. And we have 1 kit purchase with the possibility of purchasing more kits this spring. So as we look ahead to this year, we have 3 reading goals again. First one is that we're saying 75% of all students in grades K through 5 will meet their individual MAP reading growth targets measuring spring to spring. And this is different from what we've done in the past, where we've measured fall to spring. So on Roger's advice, we are going the spring to spring route this time. Secondly, 75% of our students in grades 3 through 5 will meet or exceed the standards on the 2014 reading MCA. And we hope that for the third or fourth year in a row, that all of our subgroups will meet AYP.
Moving on to math. Our student achievement goals were that 90% of our students would meet their individual growth target on the spring 2013 math test. And then by grade level, 80% of our third graders would meet or exceed standards on MCA, 85% of our fourth graders, and 70% of our fifth graders. And those goals were set based on our prior year's current reality and looking to improve from where we were at that point. So we actually did pretty well here, I think. Kindergarten has one bar because this was the first year that they actually had a growth target that could be measured because they had only taken one math test the prior year, and you need 2 sets of data to compute that. As you can see, we're really close in first grade, exceeded in fourth grade, and everybody else, except for third, showed some nice improvement in increasing the number of students meeting their growth target from 2011-12 to this past year. And I really attribute that to their growing awareness, the staff's growing awareness of what that growth target means and the impact they can have on each and every student sitting in their classroom. So I'm sure that we will continue. I know spring to spring is going to be new and more difficult for us, but we're going to jump in and see where we end up. So for our MCA, we did quite well in math. Third and fourth exceeded their goal, and fifth grade was under, but working towards that, and we're making some changes in how they flex group this year to hopefully move closer to that target. All subgroups met AYP in math. So again, we took apart our map data to kind of see where we were at in math, and I like these exploding pie charts, so you get treated to number 2, different colors. Again, the 50-50 split, but we have far more students meeting their math growth target, math growth target, so we are quite proud of that. So of the students, 82 students who did not, it's a little bit of a different profile for math, but still you can see that kids who are hovering around the 50th percentile and above, there's quite a few of them, and we know that we can attack that in our classroom. So we're looking at some of our interventions serving this group. Math Core is serving our bubble kids, and we now have teachers either using volunteers or themselves doing challenge math groups and then flexing to also meet those needs. So we are really happy with the staff jumping on board with seeing this need, and it became very clear in our individual data conferences that this was something we could clearly do something about right away. So what we're doing this year, again, you've heard about the data conferences and the data retreats, and that worked well for both reading and math. The challenge math groups are happening in every grade level, multiple days a week, which is really nice. They are math flex grouping in 4th and 5th grade, 4 days a week. We are also new to Minnesota Math Corps. We have a half-time tutor, and she is seeing 10 students right now using a program called Math Elevations. The other thing that we're finding good results with is our transition to extra math, which is replacing Rocket Math. It's done on the iPads. It's pretty exciting to see now as the year has gotten underway how classrooms are doing that. And if you want to come to Bridgewater and see that, because it's kind of interesting walking around the hallways during the day, they've figured out that kids stay better on track doing their extra math if they move out into the hallway or someplace quiet because it's timed. And so you'll often see kids out there with their iPad minis doing their extra math and then handing it off to the next kid. So it's been a really nice piece to help with fact fluency. This is one of our challenge math groups. That's a fourth grade group doing hands-on equations. And this is a fifth grade group doing, they're actually doing some pre-algebra work, which is nice. So math response to intervention year 2, we are incorporating Math Core. We also are using Math Elevations with an academic support teacher. And she is also doing foundational skill interventions or backfilling for kids who just have some gaps. And we have some people working on fact fluency interventions for students who are not making the progress we'd like to see them making in extra math. There's our Math Core tutor, and she's working with a 5th grader. And that's a Math Elevations, it's one of their abstract lesson days, so they're doing paper pencil. And then here are our new goals. So looking at where we were this year, next year again we're aiming high. 85% of our students will score within 2 points of their target on the spring map, measuring spring to spring. Our proficiency levels, we're looking again at in mid-80s for grade 3 and 4 and 70% for grade 5. And we're anticipating that all subgroups will meet AYP.
Okay, and then for our climate goals, obviously our goal is still the same. Our goals for last year, first of all, we want to maintain a high attendance level at conferences, and we made our 96% there. We want parents to feel like they're, well, not only feel like, but I want parents to be informed about their children's progress in school, and we want the students to follow the behavior guidelines of work, respect, belong, and safety. We met that goal as well. Our 3 other goals for looking at having staff support their colleagues and also staff contribute to a positive climate. And then looking at reducing our number of behavior plans by 10%, and we did reduce those by 23%. Looking at this year, we'd like, again, we want our conference attendance to remain at or above 95%. I think that's absolutely wonderful. And looking, again, having parents be informed of their child's progress, and looking at the number of fix-it plans given out being 85% of the students or less. We understand that students make mistakes like the rest of us. We'll give them a little leeway there, but we want to see that number creep down so that we are our instruction of behavior is present. And again, looking at staff supporting their colleagues and staff contributing to a positive climate. And then rather than reducing our fix-it plans by 10%, since we reduced those by 23% the year before, looking at a smaller chunk rather than trying to take off, bite off more than we could chew there. Some of our, I would say some of our more important action plan steps, like I said, our bus driver appreciation breakfast has been very popular with the drivers, been most fun, and it's really nice when board members can attend as well. Glad to have you there, and it really makes a difference when you go out to the buses in the afternoon and the bus driver knows that you know who they are, and when you're waving goodbye, I always tell the first bus driver on number 25, okay Holly, they're yours, and she takes off with them. So it's really nice to have that relationship. Grade level and parent events. Last year was our first year that we did not have our Thrilling Thursday breakfasts, and in place the grade levels planned a parent event. For example, today the first grade team had Moms in Math. And we had a wonderful attendance there, and moms came in and joined the class, and they were partaking in math activities that were going on in the classroom. So that was very nice. Earlier this month, and a couple of you were there at the Veterans Day Assembly. Again, that one's it's one of those instructional moments that you don't intend on. The pieces of the students learning how to respect and actually appreciate what others have done for them. And it's so meaningful to me when I see our veterans that walk out with the tears in their eyes because it was meaningful for them. So it's one of those things where trying to teach children to be beyond themselves and think beyond themselves isn't always easy to find those moments, but this has been one that has been really positive for us. New this year, we're going to work on staff climate builders, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And with the use of Skylert, and our communication has been absolutely phenomenal. I send out a weekly Friday update to parents, and at first I was just sending out the update, but this year last year what we started doing was taking into consideration the parents that don't have email, or those who have, for some odd reason, have scattered blocked from their email account. And some of the internet providers, it automatically blocks it. So I'm not sure. I can't handle, or there's nothing that's not in my control. So what we've done is on Monday when my administrative assistant comes back, she takes and copies that email that I've sent to parents and runs hard copies for those people without email or who have it blocked. So therefore everyone receives the same information. Here's a couple pictures from our breakfast. It's really nice when the kids make posters and cards, and the drivers want to make sure those get back to the garage. A picture from our Veterans Day Assembly. Had quite a few veterans there, which was really neat to see. This is one of our parent events that we have. It's called An Apple and a Book Day. It's quite simple, but yet very meaningful. Just for Food Co-ops, usually donates all the apples for all the students and parents. And what happens is that the classroom teacher selects a half-hour time frame, and parents come in, read a book with the child, and eat an apple. Simple, but again, parents don't need to plan for it. All they need to do is set aside that time frame. And again, it's easy for teachers to plan for as well, but it is really meaningful for those students to have mom or dad or grandpa or grandma come in and read with them for that half hour. And again, this is a picture from last year's Grandparents' Day. Had a great turnout, and we're looking forward to a great turnout tomorrow as well. One of the things that we're doing as an administrative PLC is reading the book, How Was Your Day at School? And the big thing to me is that job satisfaction matters to not only to students, but it matters to teachers. And we're looking at every staff meeting providing us a climate builder with all of our staff members. And it's that whole thing about happy teachers are going to produce happy students and successful students. So looking at that whole job satisfaction piece and bringing that to making that a reality for teachers really helps supporting them. We put a lot on their plate within, I would say, over the last 10 years, they used to be able to see their plate, and then they could feel their plate. Now I'm not sure they know they have a plate even. We've put a lot on them, and it's time for us to turn around and say, let's support each other and be mentors for each other. And I think that it's been well received. One of the things I've encouraged them to do, one Friday per month we take, and their assignment is to meet with somebody outside the school building before 8 o'clock in the morning. So obviously they're coming in a little later that morning, but their objective is to connect with another staff member so they can get that support that they really need. Sometimes I'm out connecting with them. Sometimes we're connecting in a different spot in the building, but I think it's really important that they build those connections. Staff development this year, obviously we're using our benchmark testing materials and the data to guide instruction. We've had a lot of different assessments using like our BAS, which is our benchmark assessment system, using the DIBELS program, things of that nature. But again, teaching teachers to not only give those assessments, but also take and use the results of those assessments. This coming Wednesday, we've got a session on everyday math and the use of the online resources, so that's coming up. We're always looking to strengthen our core instruction to make sure that all the students are getting the best instruction possible, and then again, working on staff team building. Bottom line, every student at Bridgewater matters, every student counts. We want to make sure that every student walking through that door, we take a look at individually and find out what does that student need to grow, and we help provide that for them. And at this time, we'll take questions.
Thanks, Nancy and Connie and Hope. Questions? Anne?
I just wanted to express how impressive the Veterans Day program was this year, and it's always one of my favorite things to go to. And over the years, I've seen the students really taking on their roles and doing their parts of the program, and the music and their alphabet work. It was really good, and all the kids were totally engaged. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Like the kids, they always make me proud. And then of course Roger and his band. That was really fun.
Yeah.
Julie?
Okay, so
Thank you. This is such a comprehensive report, and while we go through this report, it's always great to see the PowerPoint because that sort of takes this site improvement plan and it allows us to see what you're most proud of and what you think your biggest challenges are, which we can't always get from this. So I really appreciate the effort that is put into this. I had the opportunity in the fall to go to Ready, Set, Go at Sibley, and it was so wonderful. And of course, I lived through the chaotic years of open house, and it just, I felt, was a really, really positive step forward. And I'm just wondering, did you do any either formal post surveys or just talking to parents, not only about Ready, Set, Go Day, but did they have any comments about having to come during the day, during the school day versus an evening?
And I know that all the RTI coaches received all the survey data on that. And I think we've got some parents who can make it during the day, some people that can't. And we had many phone calls that said, you know, this time isn't going to work for me. Is there a different time that I can bring my child in? And we worked with many parents to rearrange their time so they could come in at the very first appointment of the day or the very last appointment of the day. And then even some of the teachers stayed later in the day to make that happen. It'd be wonderful if we could schedule everyone at the exact time that worked for them. And that part's really hard because otherwise the teachers are there for 15, 16 hours a day. But we did have some comments that said we'd like more evening appointments. But we also worked with many to switch their time for them.
Okay, good. And secondly, I think it's very impressive the amount of support that you have going on within the building. Do you have a total number between Math Core, Accelerate just the RTI, not only with the coaches but in the classrooms? Do you have a total count of how many kids you think you're servicing?
Oh my
with all the
goodness.
support?
It's like close to 100.
Wow.
It seems like every time I turn around, there's somebody receiving help.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
The good news is some are exiting. They actually are graduating out because they've met their benchmark. So we had one today that just graduated. We make a big deal out of that.
Oh, absolutely. That is a big deal.
And they
Great.
come by and they show you their graphs, and it's amazing to see the excitement in their eyes because they're making progress.
Well, I remember when I sat with Hope and watched an intervention, and the graph was huge. They cannot wait to show you that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Nope.
I met some kids the other day. I visited with them a little bit, and they were so excited to be a part of Bridgewater. They were just really excited about it. So thank you for inspiring the kids.
Well, thank you. We're excited to have them each and every day.
They were proud.
Thank you.
Rob?
I was just wondering, since usually the goals in these reports are based on math and reading, I was wondering about the science part. What's done in science in the elementary schools and sort of setting the stage for learning more science in middle school, and what you do there, and also whether you make much use of the Carson Nature Center there that is a resource from Bridgewater.
We do have grade levels that make use of the Carson Nature Center. Science, yes, it is taught, and sometimes the skills are embedded as well. And the reason these are focused on reading and math is because the state assessments are in reading. Those are the big ones are in reading and math. But it doesn't mean that science and social studies and health and all the other topics aren't taught, though. But yeah, we still teach them, even though we lost one of our most powerful science teachers in Mrs. Healy. Boy, she brought science to life like nobody's business, but still the teachers do a nice job of still incorporating that, and plus using some of the other regions in the area, like taking the kids fossil hunting and things of that nature that brings that to life for them, because it is important.
Well, I had one question. Well, first I wanted to applaud you on your aspiration goals, because you were starting, well, we didn't quite meet this, but the goals that you set were phenomenal, and you made such progress towards them, and I'd applaud the fact that next year you're not saying, well, we better take a huge step back. So I like that. The one question I had is, I know that the PLCs got across the elementaries to finally meet in the last week or so, and I just wondered if the RTI coaches, if that was an opportunity for you to share some of the interventions that each different building is trying, or?
So we did have our very first joint PLC last Wednesday, And the first PLC, we're actually having more of a get to know you at each grade level, because not all of the teachers knew each other across the buildings. So they were working on building their own definition of PLC and how that might look for them as we move forward for the 2 other joint PLC times this year, and then also examining their mindset and how they approach children every day in the classroom. And we're looking toward moving them towards collaborative work on kid data and just approaches towards teaching that they're going to share, because that's a need that all of them said that they would like to address.
So you're talking about the Carol Dweck when you're talking about the mindset? Is that what you're?
That,
yeah.
and then Danielle Tice, who came and spoke. We segued into that as well. So I don't know, Connie, do you want to add to?
I think this opportunity last week was mostly to help establish some belief systems and some common unity among the 3 schools. And we set that out as a goal, that we really were trying to build unity. And I think we're hoping to get some feedback. We actually sent out emails following the joint PLC asking for feedback as to what they'd like to see that look like at our next one, January 29th.
Great. Well, I think that's exciting, and I'm glad to see that that's finally happening. That's terrific.
I had the opportunity to sitting on most of them that took place, and the conversation was just phenomenal. And to see that linkage between the last speaker, Danielle Tice, and what they do every single day was just amazing. And to hear, one of the Greenbelt teachers talking about how this changed her whole mindset about how she views her class, and that was so powerful. And just the different conversations around the table made it so worthwhile.
Great.
Can you take just a minute and talk to us about the shift from fall to spring to spring to spring? And again, your hopes in terms of what that will help you see, and also maybe the concerns you have as you reach back a year to see the kind of data that you might have going forward?
Sure. So as you know, we try to reduce the amount of testing that our students encounter every year. And so one of the ways that we looked at that was looking at the fall data that we get from math testing. And we often find that the fall scores are somewhat depressed because of summer slide or whatever we want to call it, but the spring scores generally are higher than the fall scores. So when our teachers are measuring fall to spring, they're starting at a lower point than those students had attained the prior spring. And it's actually a bigger jump to go from spring to spring in terms of meeting individual student growth, but we feel like we're up for that challenge. And we did not do fall math testing in all areas and every grade level, so spring is where we're starting from. And when we had our individual data conferences with our teachers, we actually really wanted them to focus in on that spring score, because that really was a truer indication of where that student's highest point was. And when we come back in the fall, if they happen to get an abnormally low score, we're starting there instead of really where that student was achieving. So that was our motivation for going spring to spring. We know that it's going to be a tough goal to meet. It's across the district. I think spring to spring is a lower percentage of kids reaching their target, but we have to start. So that's what we're doing.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Connie and Hope.
Thank you.
Terrific report. All right. We are ready to move on to the high school report. Mr. Joel Lear.
And I would just reiterate, my third grader, no, I'm going to piggyback on a comment you had made. My third grader's at a different elementary here in town at Greenvale, but if the experience at Bridgewater is anything remotely close to the experience my son is having at Greenvale, I can imagine how delighted those students are to be in school every day. My wife and I are constantly amazed. Day after day, Isaac comes home and he is just absolutely jazzed. And we have these physical descriptions of what Isaac's emotional state is after every day of school. I'm a little run down. He comes home and he's ready to go. So before.
That's your son who's in the theater, right?
Well, yeah, one of the two.
Yeah.
So the middle son. So, but I would just say I'm full of admiration and awe of all of the elementary staffs of the 3 buildings in our district. Just do incredible work. And John Mahal has been with me here tonight, and I think that we can both attest to the fact that with primary reasons we went into secondary education, and one of the secondary reasons is so that we wouldn't have to be elementary teachers. So please know you have our admiration. The other piece I would say, Hope, wanted to respond to the fact that you eliminated rocket math. That's probably the other reason that Isaac is so excited every day, because he doesn't have that stress, and is enjoying the break from that, because he's a little bit of a stress case when it came to that speed mathematics. But I wanted to say thanks to the board for this opportunity to present to you. It's interesting, Julie, you mentioned an opportunity to read through the documentation and talk about what we're most proud of and what our challenges are. It's interesting too, though, when we finish this production of the site improvement plan and we prepare for this presentation, I find myself looking in the document for the other great things that are going on, and I think, oh, that's not in there. Oh, that's not in there. And I think that I know that Chris has been intimately involved in really the summer and into the fall now and into the winter dialogue about readying our students with the skills they need to enter the workforce. In addition to that, what I would kind of describe the Northfield mentality of being ready for a 4-year institution as well. And so I think about all of the exciting conversations that are occurring around that, and we sat as an administrative team at the high school this morning and talked about these 3 upcoming events here shortly after the Thanksgiving holiday that are coming and going to build steam in that regard. And I was reflecting on that, and then I look in the document and the PowerPoint, and that's not anywhere in it. So know that I would strongly encourage you. Noel picks my brain every once in a while when we have dinner together about things that are going on at the high school. So it's an opportunity to informally talk about those other things that don't fit within the parameters necessarily of the site improvement plan. So I would encourage you to visit, to communicate with staff members that you have connections with. Because there are things that are just way beyond the measurements that we are able to present here in this document, but certainly things to rejoice in addition. Well, we will get started with our site improvement project progress report and improvement plan for this coming year. And I'm going to go one better than one of my assistant principals, Jeff Eckhoff, who stands up virtually every year since I arrived in front of the 9th graders and asks them what the role of the assistant principal is. And when after they throw out a few questions, he says, no, it's actually whatever a principal doesn't want to do. I'm going to do that one better because I've got an administrative intern this fall. And so John Mahal has really, if you want to go ahead and step up, John. John is our EBD level 2-3 teacher at the high school and is in the process of completing his administrative licensure. And has been working with me in the fall and early winter, really in every capacity he can get his hands on. And he frequently keeps me honest with periodic emails that say, remember, anything that you would like me to do, any experience that you think would be valuable for me as I'm developing in this way, please let me know. And so one of the pieces that he really embraced with both hands was the site improvement plan. So we worked together on that document and then as well as the PowerPoint. So I figured he should enjoy the fruits of his labors a little bit and participate in this process. So I will turn this first part over. I jokingly told him that we're both kind of sports people, so he'll do play-by-play, I'll do color commentary, and we'll get through this game all right. So John Mahal.
Hello everyone, thanks for having me. Again, as Joel had mentioned, this is my 13th year teaching here within the district. And this is really one of the first times I've had a chance to kind of dive into something like this. I didn't, I guess, think I needed to know a lot about this previously. So it's been a good experience and really a good chance to look into the data and really what is happening here at the high school. So let's begin again. Last year, our year review, we continued with the same 2 goals, to improve the school climate and also to improve student achievement. So the positives from those themes. 72% of our students believe they feel empowered here at the high school. 89% of the students believe they feel safe here at the high school. And 89% of our students believe they have a place here at the high school. And this can be very challenging for a number of reasons for students. So we feel good about our current numbers. The continuing concerns about this, even though we feel good about 89%, there's still that 11% that believe they aren't safe here at the high school for one reason or another. And also, staff had 2 or fewer connections down to less than 7 students overall. But 21% of students believe they had 1 or 0 connections, which is a pretty significant gap. The implications for this are further address where or when students feel empowered, safe, and have a place here at the high school, and be more intentional with staff and students to define more clearly what a connection means here at NHS.
And you as board members are familiar with our student connections checklist process that we go through annually. And it was interesting, I was having a conversation with a couple staff members who said, have you ever asked the students that question? Because we've always pursued it from the staff perspective. And so when we talk about the second bullet under continuing concerns, as John mentioned, we had narrowed the list of 1,235 students in our building down to 7 who had less than or fewer than 2 teacher connections. But that was from the teacher perspective. And so then we asked the question of students, and we found that 21% of them said 1 or fewer connections. And so that gap was troubling, simply because we want to make sure, and there are 2 potential reasons, and we're really trying to address both of them with our plan moving forward. One was that we both need to get on the same page regarding what a connection is. If I say hello to some student in the hallway on a daily basis, they might not see that as a connection, but I see it as a connection. So there's a miscalculation of what how that word is defined. So we want to get at a deeper level of understanding for both groups. And then secondarily to that, if we find that we both are both reading on the same page and we still have that discrepancy, then we need to get at some of those issues that will allow us to connect with those students. And one of the interesting intangibles, and we did year before last, we did one of our students actually, Theo Hoffring, if you remember Theo, did an interview of some students who we had pulled from the list of having 1 or fewer connections, and asked them about that perspective. And it was interesting to hear some students who are ultimately more comfortable that way. And so it's also not only addressing it from the perspective of what we believe is important in terms of student connections, but also respecting what students feel comfortable with. Because there are some who just don't want to be, they like that quiet path through, just in the same way that this classroom might have students who are ready to discuss and others who are ready to sit quietly and listen but are engaged in the same level. So it's kind of an interesting secondary dive into that particular statistic.
All right, so some of our essential learnings as measured by our passing rates here at the high school. Again, we're continuing with our PLCs every Wednesday. We have our 9th grade academy that continues to do quite well. We have a seminar 10, which is an extension of our 9th grade academy, kind of a study center type situation. And then out of the last couple years, we began structured study centers to really help intensify some interventions with students that may be struggling. And then out of our systematic interventions team, we were able to see 4 needs that we hadn't been meeting for students previously, and that was the reading 10, reading 11, standards biology, and standards chemistry.
And the nice part about, if you're familiar at all with our reading intervention that's new this year, the reading 10 and standards biology are partnered together. So the reading intervention specialist, Leah Sand, is working very closely with Mark Auger, who's teaching the standards biology. And similarly, Leah in reading 11 is working very closely with TJ Levy, who's doing our standards chemistry. So it really is trying to replicate what we have been doing in the 9th grade academy, with fewer people and a little more flexibility in terms of where those things are happening. So it's a neat dialogue, because we have found, statistically, if you look at the passing rates, those 2 sciences are really difficult, particularly for those students coming out of the academy who were identified as at-risk readers, to go into those sciences unsupported on the reading side and expect them to be successful. So it's really a great opportunity to take that core group of 20 to 22 kids who the academy teachers have identified the year previously as needing continued intervention, and then to partner them with the science teachers. So we're optimistic about how that will play out over time.
All right, and as you can see, from 2009 to 2011, over a 2-year period there, we had 85% of our students pass their classes. 11 and 12, 88%, so it's kind of creeping up. And then last year, as you can see, made a very nice jump up to 93% of our students passing their coursework. So what are the implications for all of that? We're at 93% last year. How can we improve on that? Well, we'd like to continue to work toward a 0% failure rate. I think that's what every high school probably works towards. And then some other things that we've been working on here is, again, we're broadening our system of interventions so that our multi-tiered system of supports complement the elementary RTI implementation, which will include positive behavior intervention systems, which I've mentioned, as well as standards-based grading, which is something that is continuing to be in discussion and implementation at some point here soon too. So moving forward with what we'd like to try to do this year, again, as you can see, the goal or the objective is to have a building-wide systematic intervention plan that meets the instructional needs of all of our students at their instructional level. And again, the evidence of need there, 7% of students at NHS failed one class or more during 2012-13 school year. And as you can see there, the goal of increased proficiency for all students in their essential learnings, increasing from 93 to 94 percentage points. And our improving school climate goal, spring 2013 data indicates that 21% or 123 students believe they have fewer than 1 or 0 connections here at NHS. And then from the same survey, 11% students believe that there is no place for them in the building or where they felt they belonged. So our goal with that is to increase student connections so that 81% of students indicate that they have 2 or more connections to staff, and 91% of students indicate that there is a place where they belong at NHS. We also want to improve school climate so that 90% of students indicate that they're very satisfied or satisfied as a student at NHS.
And that last question represents a bit of a shift for us in terms of our student survey. Our fall and spring student survey has really focused in on safety and the issue of feeling emotionally and physically safe in our building. And this year we ventured out a little bit to gather some data about technology with the implementation of the iPads, and also gather some input from our student groups that are beyond our walls with the Mayor's Youth Council and the Health Community Initiative, looking at some questions about community involvement in the workplace, and as well as some questions about our internal structure and how students feel they move about our building on a daily basis. So this question of feeling satisfied or very satisfied is reflective of that, of the initial data that we've gathered on the new survey here in the fall of 2013.
Okay, so again, how will we get there with the goals that we've set forth for our building? Again, we'll continue the PLCs, 9th grade academy, structured study centers, seminar 10, PBIS, which is our group has gone to a couple days of training, or 4 days out of 6 so far this year of training for that, which is very exciting. And I think I shouldn't say our team believes will really help our school. Standards-based grading, our multi-tiered system of supports, reading 10, reading 11, and the standards biology and standards chemistry. The climate is again the respect retreat, student checklist activity, and a new group here at the high school that a couple of our teachers have started with 9th and 10th graders called Pride Student Group.
And obviously that list, our hope would be that each time we report to you, that list gets longer and longer, and some of those pieces you have seen, obviously, and are well aware of. John has talked about the PBIS piece and the team that has been going through the PBIS training. Really, it is I guess I would call it a parallel component of what the elementary schools have been doing with response to intervention. In fact, Gary Lewis, our shortly out Director of Special Services,
soon to be retired,
exactly, would argue that at the secondary level, certainly at the high school level, that intervention is about behaviors. And what I appreciate about really, I would group them all together in terms of PBIS, standards-based grading, and the notion of multi-tiered systems of support. It is asking the staff to function collectively. And we have heard the term independent contractors thrown around about different elements of teaching, from instruction to behavior management to classroom management to many different strands of this profession. What all of those things speak to is the notion that if we can function as a system, a living, breathing system that has common vocabulary, common response, common expectations, that we're going to function more efficiently, and as a result, function more effectively. And so those are the pieces that are really exciting about it. It's not rocket science by any stretch of the imagination. For some of the tenets of standards-based grading and looking at and beginning to question, is it too much to throw a 0 at a kid? Or is it unreasonable to not accept late work? Some of those we're grappling with, and some of those philosophical pieces that are ingrained in us as instructors, sometimes it's hard to pull them out and massage them a little bit and see where it ends up landing. But what I appreciate about what's been going on with the staff the last year and a half is that they've been willing to do that. They've been willing to pull it out and massage it. And there are some staff that are in our building today that 2 years ago, if I would have said they'd definitely be tinkering with standards-based grading, you would have looked at me and said, really? But they took some time to reflect and have done it in a way, and what I appreciate about the DPAC goal is that it was set out there. It wasn't, you're going to be doing this next year. It was, explore it, reflect on it, think about it. And so really we have taken that at its word and spent time doing exactly that. And so the staff haven't felt this notion of, Nancy mentioned the plate that has disappeared. And we do have those plates. And I do kind of reflect on Thanksgiving week that in my notion would be just get a bigger plate. But that would be for food, nothing else. But the whole notion of having that plate and saying, shifting change, wow, we're doing iPads, we're doing this, we're doing that, and now we're going to try another strategy that's going to question what I've been doing for 15 years, for 20 years. But we just asked them to reflect and then to talk to one another. And so there have been some great dialogues, great opportunities for learning to go out and hear Rick Romelli talk about standards-based grading and to experiment with some things. And it's been great to watch teachers go out, bring something back, try it, and say, I'm a disciple. And the other side of things say, I've tried this doesn't work at all. And we expect that. And I think that whole process occurring collectively in our building is what's going to get us down the road in all of those avenues of intervention. So.
And as you can see, this is our site council that has gone over and helped with this process as well. So, yes. If you have any questions.
Board members, questions? Julie?
I actually have 2 questions. John, you did a great job. Thank you. Well, you too, Joe, but just. I'm wondering if you can talk about the Structured Study Center and how that works.
Structured Study Center is essentially, if you think about a student in the mainstream courses who doesn't have a study hall, the assumption is that they are functioning independently from the intervention perspective. What we've been doing in study halls over the last 2 years is we've asked teachers on a weekly basis to run down their role in the grade book and just to do a quick check and check in with the students to make sure that everything is functioning well in terms of their academics, that they're getting stuff in on time, that their grades are being maintained, that they're not running into any problem areas. Structured Study Center at this point is really a response to a student who is struggling in a setting where in that study hall, we don't necessarily, if there are 30, 35 kids there, we don't have the luxury of an intense connection between teacher and student. In a structured study center, we are grouping 5 to 10 students at most. And those teachers then develop a secondary level of communication with each of those students' classroom teachers. So they are communicating about late work, they're communicating about upcoming assignments. The benefit of the iPad is that the iPad allows them to do that electronically in a lot of cases. But it's a much more intense process where we said these students are at risk. It might be that they've failed a course the previous quarter, or at midterm they've been failing a course. But we get them in a setting where essentially we don't let them fall through the cracks. And so particularly powerful is that moment at midterm when we move some students into the Structured Study Center, and then that teacher is working to get those grades up as well as to keep those other grades up. And so it's one more check. And not to say that the academy structure is the be-all end-all, but I think that all of us in the school would recognize that if we were able to pool our resources and recreate that for every student, that we indeed would probably already be at that notion of zero failures. We don't have that, but this is a kind of a secondary attempt to get close to that. So you've got not only the classroom teachers who are working with the students, but those individuals in the Structured Study Center who can take the time, because in most cases they've got 4 to 5 students. We do have a couple depending on the hour of the day, but there's one offered each hour of the day, and then there are 2 hours of the day when 2 of them are offered just because of the need at those different times. So.
Okay, good. And then my second question, when Jeff Pester was here doing the middle school, he talked about some plans to sort of amp up the use of the Explore test. And I'm wondering if you have given any thought or worked anything through in terms of the plan test, and maybe how you've used that in the past and if that might change going forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've been talking a lot about that. Actually, been engaged in conversation with Jeff significantly about what he's going to do in the spring with those Explore tests and the student-led conferences at the 8th grade, and then how we can kind of piggyback on that, because it's really the timing. It's an interesting notion to say, to be having that conversation as middle schoolers, and then, oh, by the way, we're moving on to high school very soon. So we've been looking at our 8th grade parent night and the 8th grade I almost said teacher-led, student-led conferences, and that Explore examination to say, how can we enrich that 8th grade opportunity so that we do, and we don't want to thrust this notion of, as 8th graders, you need to be thinking about careers and those types of interests so dramatically, but we do find that that there are some misconceptions about high school, and one of them being that success is only success if you plan for a 4-year institution beyond. Now that's a great goal, and I come from that background, but we have a lot of opportunities for exploration of some of those careers that are identified in that Explore test. So we've really been looking at the process of saying, how do we piggyback, not necessarily with the plan piece, but using the Explore then to broaden kids' perspectives coming into the high school to say, now look at all these opportunities in industrial tech and engineering, and in family and consumer science and in the business area. We've been talking about developing some not school within a school, but academies within the school where kids take a collection of courses around a particular theme. Mark Waitala in Industrial Tech and I went and visited the Manamidai, I always say this, I trip over my words, Fab Lab, there we go, which is, it's fabulous, but it's fabrication lab. And it was interesting because as we wandered around, we were just kind of awe-inspired by this lab that's at Manamidai High School. And then we came walking out and realized, well, we have most of those machines in our building, but not as many windows and not as much white paint, and maybe the floor isn't the same color. And so then we really began to explore this notion of the aesthetic and saying, well, what can we do to really enhance the look of this area? And draw more students down there. So I think that to this point, and I think that the plan examination will come, but to this point we've really been looking at that whole process of 8th grade transition to 9th grade, coming out of the Explore piece and saying, okay, how can we augment the experience for those 8th graders before they even get here that will allow them to really understand the menu that we have to offer.
Well, that sounds exciting. Yes.
It is exciting, very exciting. And that's not in the report either. Too many things not in the report.
Other questions? Rob?
I know it's only been 3 months or so that you've had the iPads, but I'm wondering if in the future, like, progress on the SAMR model will be part of the reports.
I hope so. I'm looking at our brain of the tech department there.
Nate's not here.
Absolutely.
We actually have I've been working with Dr. Jenny if you remember, one of our tenets of the transformational technology piece was to provide you some data as we move forward. And we're working on a survey that we're going to be trying to, the core concepts or the core questions will be the same, asking similar questions of parents, students, and staff to try to triangulate around substitution and looking at that model. Our district tech steering committee today started on actually planning our summer training already for next year around augmentation. And interestingly enough, as we started to look at the examples that we were counting as substitution this year, we're finding many of them are more augmentation than even more substitution. Our hope is to have that survey distributed in December. We had hoped to have it a little bit earlier than that, but decided to take some more time with it, with some of the data that Joel had from, I suppose I should turn my microphone on. Thank you, Danita.
There we go.
Joel had embedded some questions in a previous survey that we've got some good data from as well. So that will be coming. I just think, since you brought it up, what I love about this is this great site improvement plan and not one word about the iPad. And I think what that really goes to show, again, is that the transformational technology piece is really a curriculum and instruction plan in which this tablet computer is supporting. And I think Joel could probably have gone through most of those areas and shown how the iPad has had some kind of impact on it, but it's not about the device, it's about quality teaching.
I will tell a funny story, now that he has said that we haven't talked about it, I will tell a funny story about a parent whose student had said they had lost a worksheet that was in Schoology. It's impossible to lose an electronic document that's in Schoology that was placed there by the teacher, but they couldn't do it that night that a game was on because they had lost the handout. So there are certainly some areas where at-risk students
reappeared the next morning.
Right? And you know, the beautiful thing about that, and I think, you know, Matt and I have talked about this at length, is that, you know, I was ready for those kind of aha moments with the devices because we could not have possibly prepared for everything. And there are some obstacles and some challenges that we've been dealing with. At the same time, it was really exciting to get the devices in the hands of students and be ready to say, you know, kind of impress us and surprise us with what these devices are capable of. And Schoology alone, if I think about, you know, the things that have really transformed what we do on a daily basis, it's that notion of, we talked about the Structured Study Center, the access that those Structured Study Center teachers have to materials that they had to go get, or that they had to email someone about, or that they had to rerun copies of, or had to go get a second and third time. Things that we've removed from that process to make it, again, so much more efficient. And that's right, it's a tool to be used in curriculum delivery, but it certainly has made the process, in many ways, much more efficient and effective.
Other questions or comments? I have two comments or observations. One, I was really pleased to hear about the reading 10, 11, and with the science. I was thinking when Jody Saxton West, it was a number of years ago when the PLCs were just getting started, had presented to us what the data was that they were exploring with the fact that students have to be able to read well to do well in science. And I just think it's terrific the progress that's being made in that area. The second observation was about the connections, and I really like that you're continuing to try to push that. My son was trapped in the car with me for 5 hours yesterday, and when I was asking about his concerns about next year and going to college, he said, well, one of the biggest concerns was how connected he feels to so many teachers and administrators and the counselors at the high school, and knowing that that's really exceptional. And I just really applaud all that you've done, and that you're trying to get that for all students is terrific. So, thank you.
The footnote on plan, as we go forward, what you're going to find out with plan is that they're going to be adding a set of questions to the plan test. And the purpose of that is that because the 11th grade test, which is typically the last year of testing that we had with the grad test, they don't want to modify the ACT in any way, because they want the ACT to be pure in terms of its measurement across the state and across the country in terms of student performance. So the concept instead is that they're going to be adding a number of questions to the plan test to make sure that all of the standards that need to be measured in reading and writing and math and science get measured as part of plan. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, because it is going to change that in terms of the fact that I'm not sure that we're going to be able to use the plan in the same way that we've used it before, because the state knows that they have to, at some grade level, they have to embed all the other standards. And this is the place where they're going to do that. So that may be the other thing as we go forward with the plan, is trying to get a handle on what is it helping us to know, and is the piling on of additional standards and questions have a negative impact in terms of giving us good data about the correlation. Because if you remember, we've always worked with the idea that the Explore correlates with the plan performance, the plan performance correlates with the ACT performance. So you get an opportunity at 2 other times to determine where kids in terms of their readiness to be successful on the ACT. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. This is one of those deals where trying to satisfy one set of requirements at the federal level may actually get in the way of us being able to use the plan as effectively as we could use in the past.
So have they chose the ACT over SAT?
No, they have not. Okay. No, that's, in fact, every time we even mention that, it's something like, well, you know, we talked to you about what we're doing, but then we'd have to kill you. So the data's out there. You know, they've got their RFP out there to get proposals in. We don't understand what other tests they could use. But I am sure that if I was an executive with SAT, I'd be looking at telling you that I could provide all the same testing at 8, 10, and 11 that ACT does. Problematically, however, not very many of our kids take the SAT, and it is not the standard for college entrance in the Midwest as it might be on the East and West Coast. So it'll be interesting to see how they dance around that piece, or whether some other third-party vendor thinks they can come in and tell us they've got a ACT-like test that kids then we're going to struggle in the same way that we're struggling right now with the MCA data, because kids really look at that and say, you know, other than what I needed for part of the grad testing, it doesn't have any impact on me whatsoever. It may impact my school, may impact my district, but it doesn't impact me. And the whole idea of using the Explore Plan and ACT was to basically say to kids, show us your best work, because you really do want to do well in the ACT as an 11th grader, because whether you're looking at a certificate program or 2-year program or 4-year program, that's the gateway. That gives you your opportunities in and the opportunities for various kinds of support. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays, but no, they have not given us any hint yet as to which way that's headed.
All right. Thank you, Joel and John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We are ready for our second item, which is the 2013 audit. And I believe that's going to be Val and Craig.
Yep, and I get to introduce them here this evening.
Okay.
So
Yep.
we want to welcome Craig Popenhagen, who is a partner with Clifton Larson Allen. And they are here. I'll dispense with the normal accounting jokes that we throw out at this time just because of late hour. But the fact is we're...
Is that like attorney jokes?
Yes. Val, could you help us get the...
No, accounting jokes.
loaded up? But we're very happy to have Mr. Popenhagen here because I think you're going to find that we've got some really good news. You know that we're very serious stewards of our district's finances, because our district, being in a strong position financially, allows us to do the academic and other kinds of things with kids that we have heard tonight. None of that stuff happens without some money behind them. And so whether it be the 9th grade academy or some of the RTI coaching that you see, those positions and those things are not here by accident. They're here because we've had good financial stewardship. And I think you're going to be excited to hear about what I think is a pretty good audit report tonight. Not to spoil the end.
All right. Well, thanks for building me up there. I will...
No pressure.
I'll do my best to live up to all the accounting jokes that you've heard too.
Valiantly shared for that,
Probably the log. I'm Craig Popenhagen. I'm principal at Larson Allen. I think this is my 3rd time presenting before the board here. But basically, we met with the Finance Committee a week and a half or so ago and dug into the numbers and all the financial statements in fairly good detail out there. So
I won't repeat all of that. And so I'll just hit the high points, but we did issue a clean opinion on the financial statements. An unmodified opinion, which means we believe the numbers and the disclosures are fairly presented in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles. The other thing that we had was a clean report on internal controls over financial reporting, which is also noteworthy. Basically an unmodified report. Very few of our clients get that report. It means when we test and process, because that's something that we do during the audit, is we not only test the numbers, but we test the process to produce the numbers, and we didn't have any exceptions there. So very good results. With the general fund, this is just a synopsis of the general fund, and if you can read that from there, I applaud your vision. Basically, in total, general fund revenues exceeded general fund expenditures by $60,000, which in the context of given your budget is $41 million, that's about a 0.15% excess of revenues over expenditures, or more simply stated, it's about as close to break even as you can get. Your non-spendable assigned and unassigned fund balance is about $13.6 million. That includes items earmarked or assigned for OPEB benefits, payment of severance benefits, self-insurance, some carryover funds, and some tobacco settlement dollars. So kind of setting aside those amounts for future use is good stewardship of financial resources that are available to the district. The operating capital fund balance decreased about $700,000, and we'll talk about that in a minute. This particular slide just kind of illustrates over the last 5 years what's kind of happened with the district's fund balance, cash balance, receivable from the state balance. And as you know, from previous year's discussions, the Minnesota State Department of Education had really kind of slowed down on how quickly they were paying out state aid entitlements for any one given year. The good news is, long story short, in 2013, that payout ratio has returned to almost where it was 5 years ago, about 90%. So kind of how this graph works here is the middle bar in any cluster is the general fund balance. So at the end of the day, what do we have for resources to work with in the general fund? You'll notice that was pretty flat compared to 2012. Basically, what it means is, while the state has paid out cash balance more quickly, it's not new funding. It's just timing of when it gets paid out. So it's not new funding. You're getting paid out what you're owed for any 1 year of entitlement. What you see in 2013, though, is the kind of the light purple shaded bar is your cash balance, 10.6 million, compared to 6.3 a year prior. The red bar is the receivable balance. That is 4.6 million compared to 10.2 a year ago. So really what you can see is the receivable a year ago almost equals your cash balance today. And that's kind of the teeter-totter effect of receivable versus cash in the bank. Receivable goes up, cash goes down, and vice versa. So basically, again, it's not new funding, but it's a lot easier to pay bills this year with cash in the bank. So that helps a lot with just your ability to just operate the district. So the next slide, I alluded to this a few minutes ago, but this is the operating capital segment of general fund balance. And you see a decrease here from 2012 to 2013, about $1.5 million a year ago, about $800,000 in 2013. Basically, this is kind of a capital funding segment of fund balance that has built up over time, and it's built up and it was put to use in 2013. So the items that it was utilized for is security systems, wireless IT, video surveillance equipment, high school gym floor refurbishment, high school shower, pavement rehab, items like that, that basically, because there was this segment of fund balance built up over time, you didn't have to borrow money for it. And I think like the wireless IT, the security, the video surveillance, the board felt there was a need to implement those types of security systems in the buildings, and you're able to do that without having to go out and and borrow money because the funds were already here. So that, I think, points to good financial stewardship that's exercised by the district over time. The next slide is the general fund, a pie chart of the general fund revenues. Where does the money come from? This is, I've got a comparative slide for 2012, but this is 2013. And where the money comes from, in total, the total general fund revenues are about $41.1 million. 70.9% comes from state sources. And I know you remember from previous discussions over the years about this concept of tax shift. Well, take a picture of this slide right here, because the tax shift is almost minimal, 0.5%. So what does the revenue mix of the general fund look like in a normal looking year? Probably looks like this slide right here. About 70.9% of revenues come from state sources. About 22.5% come from property taxes levied on property within the district. So how does that compare with with prior year? You see this kind of light blue shaded bar, a slice of the pie of 9%. Well, that's the tax shift piece that we were talking about a year ago. And all the tax shift piece it didn't change anything about the size of the pie. It just changed where the slices fell. So a year ago, property tax revenue accounted for about 12% of general fund revenues into fiscal 11-12. And the thing is, if you look at your financial statements, look, oh my gosh, my property taxes are going through the roof. You see this big growth in property tax revenue dollars. Well, no, it's not. It's just the concept of the tax shift, what it did between the state sources and the property tax sources. The levy is the levy, so it doesn't change the cash that's coming in from the levy at all. It's just how it looks on the financial statements. So that's kind of the main points of the pie chart, and those are my basically prepared remarks. I guess I would entertain any questions you might have. Turn back to you.
Board members, questions or comments?
I would just like to recognize Val Murtisdorf, our Director of Finance. Val's prior career was working as an auditor, and one of the things that I think was really impressive with this year's audit in terms of some of the every year there's always a handful of findings, but we had no special education findings. And if you can understand special education finance and how all of that coding works and all those pieces, you know that it makes your head hurt a little bit. And it had been more than a decade since this district had a no findings in special education. And that is really Val's relentless effort at making sure that things are done right, that the appropriate controls are in place, and we really benefit from her previous accounting experience. So really, this is what Val does for quite a bit of the summer, right up until the fall, and she has done an excellent, not just a good job, but she's done an excellent job with it, and she should be commended.
I would say that Ann, Nola, and I are on the Finance Committee, so we had the benefit of getting to hear from Craig and Val earlier, and it was very clear to me working with and touching base with them in the summer in the audit that Val, it's amazing that we can come through with this clean of an audit. I mean, it isn't amazing, it's impressive, I guess is the right word. So thank you. Dr. Richardson, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Again, I think when you talk about having a completely clean audit, have an audit without any findings in terms of the process side, it's a very, very positive place for us to be. I think the other good thing, as we've always talked about, is the fact that and again, we have to help our community understand, is that while the additional amounts of money that we have that are now showing up as cash are larger, we really don't have any more money to spend. And the thing that Craig has talked about tonight and what we've talked about before is the concept of being, cash poor and paper rich, which we've been for the last few years, where we've been building a paper fund balance of saying this is money that if we had it in cash, we could spend it in cash, but because we don't, it's still on paper that it's available for us to use for budgeting if we have a reserve in place. Now we actually have the cash balance to back it up, and so now we are much more in line with, I think, showing people the amount of dollars that are in place. And the good thing is, again, we've maintained that strong stewardship. As we talked about at the work session last week, the concept of being able to come in and think about the idea of doing some kind of a demographic study or some kind of a facility study. We have the dollars to do those things when we need to do them and to do other projects as we go forward. We also mentioned tonight, and I think really important, that we were in a position with the dollars that we had in the capital operating capital fund to be able to deal with some things that we knew we needed to deal with. We were able to deal very aggressively with the security issues. Lots of other districts right now are trying to go out and pass bond issues and try to find dollars to get those things done. And they're trying to deal with how to implement the technology, especially the infrastructure side of the technology. Again, we've been able to do those pieces as well as do some good upgrades in the building. So again, I think it's a good testament through the years, I think, to the fact that as a district we've done a really solid job of maintaining a good financial position and good stewardship to our community.
All right. Well, thank you, Craig, for, sorry, Paul?
I would echo those comments simply from a board member who gets into the community from time to time, as we all do. And those are the comments that we hear from the people. There's almost, well, they may have issues, they don't generally have issues with the administration or the finances. And that's really a gift, being able to run a school. You don't have to have those two issues to get in your way of what you're trying to do academically with the students. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Val. Craig, thank you.
All right. We have our first item for individual action, which is the fiscal year 2013 audit that was just presented to board members. So the superintendent's recommendation is to approve the 2012-13 audit report as presented. I ask for a motion. Moved by John.
Second.
Second by Noel. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the audit report say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. We are ready to move on to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone wishes to pull from the consent grouping? Do I have a motion to approve the consent grouping?
So moved.
Moved by John. Seconded by Ann. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Items for information. You have in your memorandum the information on the fall parent-teacher conferences. Dr. Richardson, is there anything you'd like to add on?
No, just again, I think as typical, we've had some, again, outstanding levels of participation by parents at all three of our elementary buildings. The middle school continues to grow their population, and we're even seeing a slight increase at the high school level, where I think they're going to continue to look at other strategies to try to help increase the numbers of participants in terms of conferences as we go forward. We've also got I think, a a good set of data coming back from our area learning center, where we had an 11% increase in the number of parents coming to be involved in ALC conferences with their students. So overall, I think a very positive response.
All right. Future meeting dates. We have one more meeting yet this year, Monday, December 9th. It's a regular school board meeting. Do we have a, isn't that typically the meeting that we have a
Truth and taxation, and it's not a hearing anymore, but it is a part of the meeting where we will talk about the taxation and basically all the elements of that and do the final levy.
Okay, great. So the December 9th meeting will include truth and taxation, and then we will be looking towards the new year and are having our organizational school board meeting followed immediately by a regular school board meeting. So with that, I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
Move adjourned.
Moved by Noel,
Second.
seconded by Ann. All those in favor of adjourning say aye. Aye. Motion carries. The meeting is adjourned.